We are now talking to former Packers, Panthers, and Seahawks guard, Mike Wahle. Mike, what's up, bud?
Hey, what's good, guys? Good to see you.
You look good, man. I mean, what's going on with you offensive linemen? You retire and you lose so much weight.
Yeah, 300 pounds is kind of the benchmark for when you retire, and then everybody either goes 50 pounds up, 50 pounds down. I got about an equal amount of friends that have gone both ways, so I went 50 pounds down. I don't sweat walking upstairs anymore.
I will say this. Sean has been on our show. Sean Smith, defensive tackle. He's gone up 50 pounds or something. I think he said he's
like I said, it happened. I tell you what, I see some friends after like 7-8 years, and you see, and they got kids and everything now, and you go, you got to pull them aside and go, hey man, you don't look so good. So it's tough. It's tough. The metabolism slows down. The eating habits don't. I was lucky. I got hurt. My shoulder can't really carry that much weight, so losing weight was just kind of a means to an end a little bit.
How much do you weigh right now?
I bet you I haven't been on a scale in 10 years, but I think the last time I was on was like 245, 242, something like that. My wife hugs me and tells me how much I weigh, somewhere around 245.
You don't even look like you're 242, 245. I'm 230, and you're a lot taller. So I think, what are you, 6'3", 6'4"?
I'm 6'. Well, at my peak, I was 6'5", just over 6'5". But who knows that with this age, you shrink a little bit. But I feel like I'm right around there, and I feel like 240, 245 sounds about right. I got a big ass and legs and stuff. It's just up top, I'm thinner.
Yeah, well, you look good, man, and that's great, and that gives you a couple more years left on your life. I'm just
kidding.
There it is. You're gonna have a lot more years left on your life. As what are you, 42, 43 years old?
I'm 46, man. It's getting up.
You still look good, man. You look.
Well, I appreciate it, but listen. Here's what happens. 50 is not bad anymore. Problem is, 50 is only 10 years away from 60. So the next couple of years are pretty good, but after you hit that 50 mark, it starts things start looking a little bit different.
Well, I'm 41, and I'm not. You're only 4 or 5 years older than me, so that doesn't make any sense, okay? Because I'm trying to take care of myself. You're starting to make me worry, okay? I don't have any children yet, and now you have me worried. I'm 41 years old. I better be popping these babies out.
You're taking that European model, man. They start a little bit later over there, but life's a little bit different. Americans are trying to work themselves to death all the time. So I don't know what the answer is, but certainly I would say this: don't take the elevator, take the stairs. You'll be in good shape.
Well, I could be eating the fish and chips like they do over there in, England and France. I mean, but I'm not. I'm trying to stay away from. By the way, I had a fish sandwich last night. I was burping it up all morning this morning. It was horrible. It was a terrible feeling. I had to go to an event all the way to Manhattan. Woke up this morning and I had to run to the bathroom. So I don't want to get into that. It wasn't really, really good. My stomach was growling for the toilet. But anyway,
Errol's going to stay away from the entire United Kingdom island now. He's already wanted in Ireland, and now he's going to eat English food.
Well, he doesn't know why I'm wanted in Ireland. Okay, you could tell him why I'm wanted in Ireland.
It has to do with a feud with Conor McGregor.
Yes,
really?
I am. Yes. This happened years and years ago. It was I would say it was 9 years ago, and the whole Nate Diaz thing, and I said something, and one of the guys from his team heard me say it, and he told Connor, and then Connor attacked me on social media, on Twitter, and threw me under the bus. Then I saw him in Barclays Center when he threw that chair right through the bus. And I almost got into a fight with him at the Barclays Center. So yeah, it's a true story. And me and Connor obviously don't like each other. I want to go see the movie Roadhouse, but it's not because of him. Okay.
He's a big fella now, though. Back in the day when those little guys are popping off a little bit, as a bigger guy, I kind of go, okay. But now he feels like he's put on 40, 50 pounds. He looks like a super middleweight or something like that. He could give you some trouble.
Well, he's 170, 175. That's what he's walking at. I mean, he was fighting at 155. He probably gained about 20 to 25 pounds. And they're saying that his up and coming fight, he's probably going to have to go down to probably around 160, 165. So he's not as big. He looks big because he looks bigger than he was. So I'm like almost, I think I'm almost like 70 pounds heavier than he is. So I don't know.
I don't mess with those MMA guys, man. I know better.
It's going to be hard for him. It's going to be hard. I'm not worried about him. Let's get off this. Let's get off this. Let's go into the offseason right now with the Green Bay Packers. And the Packers had a great year. Jordan Love looked really, really good. 38 touchdowns and only 8 interceptions. 36 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. He was fantastic. Put up those Aaron Rodgers numbers where all the Packer fans are like, we have Aaron Rodgers 6.0. And I said, not 2.0, not 1.0, 6.0. This guy is going to be one of the greats, okay? And he had a great year. But their wide receiving core, there's still some questions over there. They're a bunch of youngsters. Watson can't stay healthy. And then this offseason, they added Josh Jacobs. They added some offensive line help. What are your thoughts to the Green Bay Packers, the moves that they made at in the offseason in free agency?
Yeah, so far it's been nuts. Like Monday is a great example. They got rid of the two kind of elder statesmen on the offense, and arguably, I would make the argument that they're the two best players that they had on the offense in Aaron Jones, and then obviously David Bakhtiari, who's going to be he's going to be a gold jacket wearer guy here soon enough at left tackle. So you get rid of those two guys immediately. Like the youngest team in football just gets younger, and then they bring in. They also got rid of A.J. Dillon, so their running back room is somewhat empty. The cupboard's bare. But they bring in Josh Jacobs from Las Vegas. And the guy's an absolute stud. He's 223 pounds, runs downhill, a little bit of different kind of guy than Aaron Jones. For me, I like the dynamic ability of Aaron a little bit better, but he was creeping up on the 30 years old. He didn't want to take the pay cut. So that move really does make sense, I think, on paper. We'll have to see how it plays out. The guy did wear a C on his chest in Las Vegas. I think that counts a lot with Goody and Coach LaFleur. They haven't replaced Bakhtiari yet, and I don't know if they're going to be able to do that. Hopefully via the draft, maybe an early first round pick. And then on the other side, man, they brought out Xavier McKinney, which we brought in Jeff Hafley from Boston College defensive coordinator, and he was talking about I need this post safety, somebody that can erase part of the field, play at all three levels of the defense. So this guy has, for the Giants at 24 years old, he's already had a really established career. He can play 20 yards off the ball. He can play in the box. They send him on pressure looks all the time. There's some things from a coaching perspective you could certainly work on with Xavier McKinney, but I think it's a huge upgrade, obviously, for that room. And again, guy that wore a C on his chest. So some influential guys going into the locker room and at 1265 Lombardi, no doubt.
So what were your impressions of Jordan Love and of the young receivers? And do you think that Matt LaFleur kind of coached it differently than he did when Aaron Rodgers was there?
Oh, no doubt. Yeah. So Aaron Rodgers doesn't, you get to a certain point, and Aaron Rodgers doesn't need coaching. I mean, every once in a while you can say, hey, did you look at this? Did you look at that? But he's probably calling half the plays from the line of scrimmage. I mean, this is a completely different offense. And I think for Green Bay Packers fans, you kind of got to see now, this is what Matt LaFleur's offense looks like when he runs it the way he wants to run it, not the way that Aaron Rodgers wanted to run it. That young receiving group. Listen, here's the great thing about the Green Bay Packers right now. You're still on your rookie contract for another year with Jordan Love. He's got that 5th-year option they locked in. But your wide receiver room is full of first and second year guys, and they're just absolute units. Like the guys they brought in this year, Dontavian Wicks, Jaden Reed, Malik Heath showed up, and then Romeo Doubs last year. Christian Watson's been hurt, but he's actually not even the first option anymore because some of these other guys have played so well. You bring in Josh Jacobs. You have two rookie tight ends that played at high level last year. So you're looking at this group. They're all going to grow together. And really the only question mark is that offensive line. Jordan Love in the second half of the season was playing as well as any quarterback in the National Football League. I think part of that had something to do with the fact that Aaron Jones was playing at such a high level, particularly in the last 5 games. But Matt LaFleur established himself as a master play caller. I think he really made his bones this last season, despite having 3-13 in 3 seasons. You look at last year and you go, okay, this guy's a good coach because he went from really, really young team, inexperienced, not winning a lot of football games, quite frankly, playing some bad football. And with the help of Jordan Love and that young receiving core in particular, I think they really turned it around.
As everybody knows, we are talking to ex-Packers, Panthers, and Seahawks guard Mike Wahle, friend of the show. He's been on the show a couple of times, and we've been trying to get him on the show, and he's back on. He's been working, doing what he does, now that he's retired from the NFL. Aaron did not have much of a season this year. He went down in the first game after 4 plays, and everybody throughout the social media markets, everybody off the field, all these analysts, the press said, oh, he's done. He's not going to play anymore. He just tore his Achilles. He almost came back this year. What were your thoughts when you saw Aaron Rodgers going down the way he did this year? And then obviously trying to get back in this season. If the Jets were in a playoff race, maybe he comes back and makes one of those miraculous comebacks that we've never seen a quarterback make. Did you think that Aaron would have come back if the Jets were in a playoff race?
That's a great, medically, it would be unprecedented. It just goes to show you how stubborn he is and what a belief he has in himself and the guys that he surrounds himself with. For him to even have the option or the thought in his head that he'd get back, I think it was after 5 months. When he goes down, initially you think, and I think everybody's heard this before, the turf at MetLife is awful.
Horrible.
And guys are getting hurt all the time. And it immediately goes back to the NFLPA and the gripes that they have with the owners about, the surfaces that they're playing on. My first thought, honestly went there. But as it pertains to Aaron and kind of going through you watch Hard Knocks and you kind of fall in love with him again. I think regardless of where you maybe stood with the COVID deal and the Packers last couple of years, he just seemed like a really personable, likable guy, a good leader. He goes down, and then you kind of start hearing about he might try to make this comeback. Quite frankly, it's the only news that was coming out of New York. The Jets were such a bad football team without him. They're kind of fumbling around with that poor quarterback. But Aaron is he's a unique individual. He's, obviously a surefire Hall of Famer, one of the most talented guys I think I've ever seen in my lifetime at throwing the football. And if you like him or you don't like him, you have to appreciate the way that he marches to the beat of his own drum. And he certainly did that with this rehab and what he's been going through. So I think it's exciting that he's going to be with a good Jets football team for the next couple of years, healthy, and you see what they can do. They could be a real threat to particularly that division now.
Now, I'm sure you heard that he might be running for vice president, which I think is ridiculous.
Right.
He was never doing that. And he even came out on the Pat McAfee show and said that there's not a chance that he is running for vice president. He actually came out the other day on the McAfee show saying that he wants to play 4 more years in the NFL. So why all of a sudden is he going to retire and become the vice president of the United States? It's just ridiculous, Mike. What were your thoughts when you heard that story?
I got to be honest with you guys. I spend a minimal amount of time thinking about stupid things like that. I know there's just we're all on sports talk shows and they have to have something to talk about. But man, I really like watching tape. I like breaking down players. Like talking about the off the field stuff, the vice president stuff. It's like I don't have a lot of time for it.
It's just ridiculous that even came out. And that's the press, and that's everybody trying to throw Aaron Rodgers under the bus because of the offseason. It doesn't make any sense.
Next thing you know, Woody Johnson will be some political scandal at this rate.
Well, if you're gonna say as a bet man, which one I would bet on, I think that would happen before the Aaron Rodgers vice president thing. But who knows? Wasn't Woody an ambassador for Trump somewhere? Yep. Where was he?
Yep.
Where
England.
Yeah,
that's
England.
Right. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You never know.
That's why I mentioned it. I'm like, who knows? Maybe Woody
Trump scandal, man. The guy's certainly got enough to go around right now, unfortunately.
So speaking of the Jets off season, we were hearing a lot of comments with Aaron Rodgers and Joe Douglas, Joe Douglas not getting his word out in the organization. Aaron Rodgers with bringing a lot of his guys, these ex-players, and Robert Saleh trying to keep him there when a lot of Jets fans wanted him fired. What are your thoughts to the drama that has come with this Jets off season, and how much power do you think Aaron Rodgers has in this organization?
Well, I think last year certainly you felt that when he decided to go there, not only with the hiring of the offensive coordinator, but then you start looking around at all the people that are showing up, and really not producing. I mean, quite frankly, and I think it's unfair to those guys. Allen Lazard was a great player for the Green Bay Packers. He did a lot of things, I think, off the football that really helped, particularly in that run game. What you have to think about, though, is you can't play this game at wide receiver without a good quarterback, and they just didn't have one. And unfortunately, Randall Cobb, they're not going to have the numbers, in particular because they don't have anybody good throwing them the football. So the whole thing looked a little bit worse than it actually was. Certainly, as you look to this next offseason and see what kind of power he holds, I think it diminishes. The longer you're not playing, I think the more that diminishes. And Aaron just seems to be, like, I don't know Aaron, from Adam, but it seems to be he's in a good headspace. It seems that he has something he wants to prove. You make this move to New York. You leave Green Bay. You have all these opportunities. They build this team around you. You got to go produce. I think he understands that right now. So I don't know that they're going to be big players here in the free agency. Certainly, you look at the draft, they're going to have some opportunities because of how they finished up the season. But really, I think after you look at shoring up that offensive line and figuring out who's going to be healthy and where they're going to play, you really got some good players at skill positions on that offense for Aaron to build around and kind of be a leader and a mentor too. I think they're going to have a good year.
We are talking to former Packers, Panthers, and Seahawks guard Mike Wahle. And it's so funny, you mentioned they needed to boost up that offensive line. Well, they made a trade for Morgan Moses, a guy that they brought in a couple of years ago and couldn't stay healthy. But he had a pretty good year. The last 2 years with Baltimore, he's been pretty efficient as a tackle. So now they're going to bring him in as a right tackle. So they move him over there. So that gives Aaron some weapons, at least some weapons to protect him. I mean, you're going into another season where you had Dwayne Brown who couldn't stay healthy. Elijah Vera Tucker, he goes out against Denver again. And you have an offensive line that was depleted once again with a veteran quarterback that's going to be 40 years old this coming year. Like you said, Mike, you need to give him that protection so he can make plays in the open field and get the ball to Alan Lazard and Garrett Wilson, who was complaining this offseason and throughout this season that he wasn't seeing the ball. My question to you is, you look at the position the Jets are, and you said they're going to have a good season, but you look at the position they are at number 10. Where do you go if you're the GM of the New York Jets?
Listen, when you guys signed Mekhi Becton a couple of years ago when you drafted him, my only comment was I've seen this story before where you just get this mountain of a man that can, his weight fluctuates probably between 350 and 450. I mean, there's a 4 in front of his weight at some point during the season. When you see him against Myles Garrett this last year, when you're that tall, at some point I think it becomes a disadvantage. And I just don't know, between the weight, between the health, between the amount of bend that he has to generate to get against a really good player that can play low. Like, everybody turns into Dwight Freeney if you're 6'9". So I think that's an issue. I like Joe Tippmann. I like Xavier Newman. I like Elijah Vera Tucker. But I think at the tackle position, you really need to go out and get a guy that, Aaron Rodgers had David Bakhtiari for the majority of his career. And when you got a guy like that, you call him a force multiplier, not only because of the job he does blocking the defensive end, but it's also the confidence he gives the guard, the tight end, particularly the quarterback on his blind side. So I really think you might be looking to go out and get a really high level guy. There's going to be a couple tackles at 10, or a couple really good offensive linemen at 10 that can add value to this team. They have a great defense already. I know there's always some plus minus guys in this free agent period, but if you're just looking like, hey, where can we really make a dent on this team? It's got to be offensive line.
So your other team, the Carolina Panthers, they had some dysfunction this season. Frank Reich gets fired in the middle of the season. They wanted to draft Bryce Young. He wanted to draft CJ Stroud, we were hearing. And they're trading Brian Burns. They're looking to get rid of everybody. What are your thoughts on the Panthers turmoil this season?
I have a couple thoughts, because I think Frank Reich's a good coach, but when you see a guy recycle, like he gets fired and then before the season's even over, he's already hired again. Like that doesn't make sense to me. I feel like you need a year, decompress, do an evaluation of what went wrong. How am I going to make myself better? And just to jump into that next job, it just felt premature from the jump. And then you start hearing this stuff about if your ex-quarterback, NFL, quarterback coach who developed a ton of guys in the National Football League wants a specific player. I don't know if this is true or not, but if they wanted player B and you chose player A, like, who's making that choice? That doesn't make any sense. And you already hear about all the things that go on there with the ownership. And we'll see how that goes moving forward with the new leadership in place. Dan Morgan being the general manager, I think first and foremost, my ex-teammate, really happy for him. But last year, from the coaching staff debating on how they should use Bryce Young, should they be in the pistol, should they be under center, should they run play action, should they be dropped? I mean, all these questions that start coming out after guys get fired. You know that there's only 8 good franchises in the National Football League. Everybody else is trying to stay afloat. And when you hear this kind of stuff, as an ex-player, it's not really surprising, but it is frustrating because there are guys in that building that are great football players. Frankie LaVue just moved teams. He was an amazing football player. Brian Burns should be a lifelong Panther. He's not going to be there anymore. They got rid of Hassan Riddick the year before. And it's just frustrating, I think, from a guy that wants to see those players do well when they're constantly put in this situation, much like 24 other teams in the National Football League, where it's just never as consistent as you want it to be.
Mike, they added a wide receiver. They needed some help. They had Adam Thielen, and they bring in Deontay Johnson, who really has not had a good career with the Pittsburgh Steelers. For some reason, this guy was a high pick, and everybody thought this guy was going to be a superstar wide receiver. And I drafted him back-to-back years of my fantasy, and he has given me nothing to show. By the way, I still won my fantasy league, even with him on my roster, by the way. But he missed a significant amount of time. What were your thoughts when the Panthers brought in a guy like Deontay Johnson?
Well, I think it's probably step one. And, my thought process always goes to who is the coach that is going to develop those guys. So if you've got what we would just call an underperforming guy, who's the coach that's going to be there? So I think Rob Moore is now the new wide receivers coach in Carolina. And, how much do we know about his ability to develop talent? Like, quite frankly, I've just not read up enough to know that for sure. But I always go look at that coach is going to see him every day, is going to be working with him. Is he a guy that can change that player's future? In other words, can he change his process to get him going on the right track? Because he's definitely a talented cat. And it's just a question of putting in enough young, talented guys around Bryce. Bryce Young's a really talented player. He got put in a bad situation last year. And then on top of it, CJ Stroud gets picked behind him and just plays like, an all-pro from the jump. So there's a lot of things that kind of make the optics look worse than they really were. He's a very, very talented player. They got to find the offense that fits him. They also got to put some guys around him that can grow with him. Much like we were just talking about with Jordan Love. You got a first-year starter at quarterback with a bunch of first- and second-year guys in the tight end and the wide receiver room. I think that makes a difference. You help these guys grow together. So hopefully Deontay Johnson could do that for him. Having said that, you're probably looking in the draft. You need to get another high-level guy, whether it's a guy to take the top off or it's a traditional like X receiver. We'll have to see.
So one of your teammates just got inducted into the Hall of Fame, Julius Peppers. Congratulations to him. What was he like on and off the field? And do you have a good Julius Peppers story?
So Julius is here's a Julius Peppers story. So you walk in and you know who he is. He played basketball at North Carolina. He just doesn't look like everybody else, quite frankly. He just looks like a better version of a human. He's an evolved human compared to everyone else. Makes you feel bad about yourself when you're walking around. But we're doing so John Fox used to want everybody to do a combine every offseason, which was absolutely asinine. But they wanted to keep tabs on how everybody was doing. So they would do a vertical jump test. And we had like an 11-foot ceiling. And they had to take the tiles out of the ceiling and stick the vertical jump, like, the little thing where you go and tap it. They had to stick that through the ceiling because Pep would just disappear into the damn ceiling every time he jumped, man. And we were just he would just do stuff like that. Like we had another time where Pep was like, we were doing a 20-yard med ball toss over our heads. And at this point, I'm legitimately strong. Like I'm NFL strong. I work out all the time. I could throw that thing a mile. I throw it like 20 yards, right? Pep is just talking to like Deshaun Foster, just having a chat, laughing, and flicks it like 26, 27 yards without even thinking about it. I mean, beat everybody else by like 5 or 6 yards. He just had that kind of like freakish strength and athleticism. And I think as he got older, because he was, relatively young when he came to Carolina in his first stint, but then you see him in Chicago, you see him in Green Bay, and you see the kind of leader and kind of more of a little bit more of a vocal guy that he turned out to be. Always a great teammate, but I think he added that element of maybe being more of a vocal leader as he went to these different stops. But there's always a handful of guys that you just look at and you go, well, that guy wasn't meant to be like an electrician, man. Like he needed to be an athlete. Like that's what he was going to do with his life. Like that's what he was put on this earth to do. And Pep certainly felt like one of those guys.
Mike, you look at this offseason, do you see any of the tables turning now that some of these free agents are off the board? Do you look at the NFC right now? Is the NFC much better now that Kirk Cousins is going to Atlanta? Is the NFC that much better with all these different moves? Russell Wilson, obviously in the AFC, he goes from one team to another in the AFC. He goes to from the Broncos to Pittsburgh. What are your thoughts to some of these acquisitions? Do you think that the NFC is better? And do you think some of these AFC teams are much better now with some of the acquisitions they made?
Well, I think you always have to start at the quarterback position when you talk about maybe who's the stronger conference. And I think for me, first of all, you got Pat Mahomes in the AFC. That kind of wipes the table right there. But you got Aaron Rodgers coming back. You have Joe Burrow. I mean, the top 3 guys are in the AFC. I think the AFC is just a very, very strong conference. Kirk Cousins going to the Falcons. Like Kirk Cousins is the best agent in the history of agents. The guy's got one playoff. I mean, he's a good pocket quarterback. I mean, he puts up some numbers, but as far as winning playoff football games, he just doesn't have that resume. And maybe not all of it is his fault, certainly. But I think when you get to be a franchise guy, the expectation is you're gonna kind of put a couple people on your shoulders and win some of those games. Go into Atlanta. How does that play out over the next couple of years? I really don't know. I can't recall how old he is now, but I just don't think Atlanta's in a position with, I think the way the Saints are going to bounce back. Tampa's just still going to have something going there. I don't know if they're in a position to go and challenge for that division right now. We'll have to see. You see Russell Wilson going to Pittsburgh. That's certainly an interesting move. I mean, listen, it cost him $1.4 million. Like it's the lowest risk, high reward play in the history of quarterback play. So I think that's just a smart decision by Pittsburgh or anybody who wanted to pick him up who felt like they needed competition at the quarterback. I will say Kenny Pickett should be looking at that like it's a competition, not a foregone conclusion. You like to see all these moves. You'd love to see how much money now the salary cap is like 3 times more than when I was playing. And that wasn't that long ago. It's asinine. This money it's funny money. Now you're all playing Monopoly money, but I absolutely love it. I love the action that we're getting across the National Football League. I love to see the moves, and I love to see the way that these different teams, these general managers, these coaches are thinking about their teams when they bring in guys. Like we talked about the Packers before. You get rid of Aaron Jones, who's 29, 30 years old, but really, honestly, the best football player they had on the offensive side of the football when he was healthy last year. And you bring in a Josh Jacobs, who's a great player in his own right, and maybe better at some things than Aaron Jones was at the same position, but certainly a different style of player. And so what does that mean for the rest of the team? You see that up and down the National Football League. I think that's the fun part for fans, especially when you're talking about the offseason.
So you mentioned Patrick Mahomes. One of the big storylines this season was one of which was the referees. A lot of controversy with the referees and Patrick Mahomes, and the other one being the Taylor Swift effect on the NFL. What are your thoughts on those?
Referees, listen, it's hard to say. It's hard to accuse anybody of being biased, but gosh darn it, if it doesn't feel that way, if you're the fan of the other side sometimes with some of the stuff that happens here. Certainly, I'll say this. The NFL is telling the referees that the most important player on the field for ratings and money is the quarterback. They've done that with the way they've legislated rules. They've done that certainly the way they've changed offensive football. Tom Brady had a great, couple comments about 2 years ago. It said they've made play worse because these guys don't have consequences for their actions because, defensive players get kicked out of the game for hitting somebody. So I think there's that whole side to it. Patrick Mahomes being the most important person by that definition in the entire National Football League. He's probably going to get the benefit of the doubt more often than not. No comment on the Taylor Swift stuff. Again, guys, like there's certain things I care about and certain things I don't. I can't even waste my time.
Well, we love you, Mike. Keep up the good work. You're doing such a great job. And by the way, you look good, man. I said this before we got you on the show. You look fantastic. And how's your family doing? How's your wife doing?
Life is good, guys. We're listen, I got 2 soccer kids, right? And my daughter's about to graduate high school and go off to play at Youngstown State. Really excited for her. Sad to see her leave. And that's just it's the time of life. I train athletes, and then I get to go home and train my own athletes, and there ain't nothing better.
Well, there you go. And guess what? You get to go home to your beautiful wife now, and you don't have to worry about getting killed on the football field. So there you go. Anyways, Mike, keep up the good work. We'll speak to you very, very soon. As always, when the season comes closer, maybe we'll reach out to you again and get you on the show if you're not too busy, my friend.
All right, gentlemen. Good to see you. Thank you.